In this video, I'm going to be going over the details of the neuromuscular junction. Shown here is actually a neuron, not a nerve, but a neuron, and then it branches out and it synapses with the muscle fibers, and these are skeletal muscle fibers. And you can see here it's synapsing with this muscle fiber and this muscle fiber, and it branches into innervating other muscle fibers. So remember from before, the motor neuron and all the muscle fibers that it innervates constitutes a motor unit. What we're going to do is we're going to focus just on this area right here, the neuromuscular junction. The neuromuscular junction is a synapse between a motor neuron and a myofiber. The axon terminal and motor end plate constitute the neuromuscular junction. So shown here is a neuron. And remember, the very end of a neuron is called a axon terminal, also called a terminal bouton or synaptic end bulb. And where it makes contact, the synapse, you have a motor end plate. And this motor end plate is going to have acetylcholine receptors on it. So this acetylcholine that gets released is going to bind to these acetylcholine receptors. Along the sarcolemma of a muscle cell, wherever you have the acetylcholine receptors in conjunction with the axon terminal, we call that a neuromuscular junction. And the wavy area right here you see at the sarcolemma, that's the motor end plate. Well, there's a minute space between this axon terminal and the sarcolemma, or the motor end plate. And this is known as a synaptic cleft. And if cleft seems familiar, there is such thing such as a cleft lip or cleft palate. That just means a space between those. Well, the motor end plate is this depression right here in the sarcolemma. It's adjacent to the synaptic end bulb, or that axon terminal. The neuron terminal is filled with vesicles that contain the neurotransmitter known as acetylcholine. And the motor end plate has junctional folds. So what you see here with this folding are the junctional folds. And this is greatly going to increase the surface area that these acetylcholine receptors are on. These acetylcholine receptors are also referred to as nicotinic acetylcholine receptors or nicotinic receptors. We're going to get more into nicotinic and muscarinic receptors, and we're going to use this a lot. So right now, you just want to become familiar that nicotinic receptors are the same thing as acetylcholine receptors at the neuromuscular junction of skeletal muscle. Also in here, along with those acetylcholine receptors, is an enzyme called acetylcholine esterase. You want to make sure you star this. Acetylcholine esterase is an enzyme that's located in these junctional folds, and what it does is it degrades acetylcholine, thus ending the depolarization signal to the muscle cell. So acetylcholine is going to get released by this axon terminal, or terminal bouton, or synaptic end bulb. It's going to go across the synaptic cleft, and it's going to bind to the acetylcholine receptor to activate that acetylcholine receptor. We're going to see sodium is going to come in to start the depolarization of the sarcolemma on this muscle cell. Well, what do you do with the acetylcholine? Because it'll continue to stimulate if you don't break it down. That's where these come in. This is acetylcholine esterase, and it's an enzyme that's going to break down acetylcholine. So in order to stimulate that muscle, that axon terminal has to continually release acetylcholine because this acetylcholine esterase is going to continually break down acetylcholine. That way, when you're finished contracting your muscle, you relax right away because of this acetylcholine esterase. Really important enzyme. Here's acetylcholine, and it gets broken down by acetylcholine esterase, and then it becomes choline and acetic acid. This is acetylcholine esterase. And then this can be used to remake more acetylcholine in that synaptic end bulb. And we're going to go through a lot of detail on this later on. This is a slide showing the axons innervating the motor end plate on extraocular muscle, specifically the superior rectus muscle of a chicken. And this is where they're connecting. That's that neuromuscular junction, where this axon terminal synapses with the motor end plate. And it was stained red because, well, we had a stain that specifically bound to acetylcholine receptors. Let's test your knowledge. Pause the video, select the term that makes a sentence correct. Here are the answers. Pause your video, select the term that makes a sentence correct. Here are the answers. And that concludes this video, and next up we're going to go over contraction.